you, everybody, for coming to the College Football Betting with Aaron Torres YouTube channel. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, click that subscribe button. It helps our channel grow. It helps our audience grow. I appreciate it more than you know, as we're talking college football on this channel year-round. Appreciate your support. Click that subscribe button. Another very intriguing game in SEC country. It is LSU at South Carolina. This one's interesting. LSU, a 6.5-point road favorite, the over-under, like the Alabama-Wisconsin game, set at 50.5. Big game for both teams, right? LSU, you cannot take a second loss this season. And, of course, South Carolina, you want to prove that last week was not a fluke. Going in this game, think it's very interesting. Let's start with South Carolina. You're at home. Credit where it's due. You smacked Kentucky. You get to come back and you get to play in front of what should be a rowdy, loud stadium. What's interesting about that Kentucky game, it was complete domination, but it was kind of a weird game because, listen, we all watched it like everybody else, right? And it was a completely awesome defensive display. Offensively, it was kind of whatever. Like you look at the final score, 31-6. You think that South Carolina, oh my goodness, they must have gotten 250 yards rushing. They must have thrown for 4 touchdowns. No. They kind of just beat Kentucky up at the line of scrimmage. Kentucky had no answers. Brock Vandagriff was running for his life. We're going to talk about the Kentucky perspective in a minute. And really, what stood out to me about South Carolina in that game was 2 things. The first one, credit where it's due. Last week in the Kentucky-South Carolina preview, I said I wasn't buying the hype around the defensive line. I give a lot of you credit because a lot of you said, Torres, that might be an area of strength. Dylan Stewart, 5-star. They got dudes. Torres, pay attention. Well, they just blew up against Kentucky. Crazy stat. What was it? About 9 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. Brock Vandagriff, as I said, running for his life, holds him to 3 of 10 passing. And it was not pretty for the Kentucky Wildcats. As you know, listen, we know what happened from the Kentucky perspective, but from the South Carolina perspective, what was equally interesting, as great as the defense was, the offense is still very much a work in progress, right? Because again, you expect it to be, you think it's going to be, you look at the score and you think it's going to be a certain way. South Carolina only finished with 252 yards of total offense. Lenora Sellers, 10 of 14 passing, 166 yards. So he did hit some big plays, but it wasn't like they were throwing the ball all over the field. It wasn't like they were running all over Kentucky. 79 carries for 35 carries for 79 yards. I am all over the place in this preview. 2.5 yards per carry. It's not like South Carolina was able to move the ball all over. From the LSU perspective, by the way, also worth noting with South Carolina, they, of course, nearly lost to Old Dominion just a week before that. LSU, you talk about an interesting result. So they obviously played USC in week 1, the other USC, Southern Cal, and they took that L. But then they come home. They're playing Nicholls last week. Very strange game with a couple positives, but quite a few negatives as well. They win 44-21. Garrett Nussmeier was awesome. Throws for 6 touchdown passes. The problem for LSU, they finished with just 68 yards rushing against Nicholls. The defense, listen, I think the defense probably a little bit of an overrated in terms of, how bad was their performance. Bottom line is they did give up 21 points. They didn't give up a single point after the first possession of the second half. So the final, whatever that would be, 35 minutes, 25, 28, 30 minutes of the game, they completely shut out Nicholls. So defense needs to be better. Run game certainly needs to be better. The passing game is elite, though. And as I start to look at this game, think the line is very interesting, right? Because, again, South Carolina has that dominant win. You just kind of assume they're coming home, all the momentum, home field advantage. They got to be a favorite or a pick 'em or whatever. No. Vegas still likes LSU. And I'll be honest, in terms of this pick, I like LSU as well to win outright and cover the 6.5. Bottom line is, first of all, after South Carolina beat Kentucky, I said after that game, I said, listen, let's not oversell this. Oh, South Carolina, they may be some stunning surprise team in the SEC. No. Don't think South Carolina is that good. Just think it was the right team at the right time, and maybe Kentucky isn't as good as we thought. And so I said, I don't think South Carolina is that good. South Carolina fans got mad, but apparently Vegas agrees with me. And beyond just that, beyond just, the fact that Vegas has LSU as a touchdown favorite basically on the road, even though I don't love taking road favorites, I do kind of like the matchups from LSU's perspective. First off, that South Carolina pass rush. We know it's elite. Well, guess what's happening? They are going up against the best offensive line maybe in college football. We know how good Will Campbell is. We know how good Emory Jones is. We know that both of those offensive tackles could go in the first round. And they have obviously through 2 games allowed Garrett Nussmeier time in the pocket. They protected him. The run offense needs to be better. But if South Carolina's strength on defense is getting to the quarterback, I think they're going to have much more trouble this week than they did last week against Kentucky. Then from the South Carolina when they have the ball perspective, LSU's defense to me is still very much a work in progress, but this feels like a spot where if you're LSU, you're going to get right in this game because again, Lenore, like it's a nice story. I'm glad South Carolina won in Lexington. They had 252 yards of total offense. And with LSU, they themselves have had trouble getting to the quarterback. Well, this is a quarterback that's not going to drop back a ton. Not an issue. By the way, when he does, the LSU secondary is probably an area of weakness. He's not going to throw the ball a ton. And so I just don't see this as a game where the matchups favor South Carolina. What they do best on defense goes directly against what LSU does best on offense. And when South Carolina has the ball, what they do worst on offense goes up directly against what LSU does worst on defense. So the matchups favor LSU. Listen, there's an old saying in sports that sometimes styles make fights. And this just feels like a game where the styles do favor LSU. And I do like LSU to go into South Carolina, get this win. They need this win. I believe that they get it. I will say the final score is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 30-14 or something like that. I'll just be honest. I just don't think South Carolina is very good. Maybe I'm proven wrong. Said the same thing about them last week before they played Kentucky. I was dead wrong last week. Maybe I will be again. But this is one that, in my opinion, very much favors LSU.